Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Road to an Effective Classroom Environment. I am your host, Dr. Lashawnte, and it is so great to be back before you all once again. And we haven't spoken since October of last year. Why is that? Well, Dr. Lashawnte has had herself in a lot of different projects, and I've had a lot of different things just going on that needed my attention. So, as always, education keeps you busy. As an assistant principal, I stay busy. Also, developing my business and my brand, Lee James Consulting, LLC, that has also kept me busy. And also during that time, I was writing a book and got it published. And so was focusing on the marketing of that book. And the name of that book is My Name is Lashawnte, From the Womb to the Woman. And it is an awesome prelude to my third book that I will be putting out at some point in the next few months. And also just taking care of some personal things as well. Shout out to my daughter. Mama loves you. Mwah. I know you're doing such an awesome job in meeting your goals. And I just want to say that I'm proud of you. So shout out to my daughter. So that's a small snippet of what I have been doing. And hopefully over the next few episodes this year, I'll go into more in-depth conversations about some of those projects. But yes, this is 7 years of The Road to an Effective Classroom Environment. That is something to say, yay! Yes, 7 years. And I hope to be before you for 7 more years. And I want to continue with this podcast for a little while. If there is something we will transition into after this, then so be it. But right now, we are still on this road to an effective classroom environment. And the episode today is entitled Coaching for Change, Turning a Challenge into Success. So what does that mean? Where did that topic come from? I'm so glad that you asked. The topic comes from a conference that I was asked to submit a proposal to. The proposal was accepted. The name of the conference is Coaching for Change. And this year, the conference is in May. And I am so looking forward to presenting and being one of 45 presenters for a 2-day conference. And so my session is entitled Equipping Coaches to Support the Uncoachable. And in looking at that particular title, I was looking at those individuals who we sometimes deem, air quotes, uncoachable. And so my presentation goes into a lot of talking about what does that really mean to be uncoachable? Is that a real thing? But for our discussion today, we're just going to talk a little bit about the coaching aspect and just some things that as a coach, what you want to be able to do before you even go into that coaching moment with an individual or with a group of individuals. So this conference is for instructional coaches, but it also benefits anyone who has contact with adults in the education world, whether you are in public education, private, university level. This is for individuals who are providing support for adults in that building. Doesn't matter if you're a classroom teacher, support staff, whether you are classified staff, secretary, receptionist, does not matter. There are so many different strategies and techniques that can be used with truly anyone who is in that educational realm. So with that conference being open to individuals that come into contact with those who are in different roles within a school or a school district, how can support be given to those individuals? Well, one thing that you want to be able to do is, as a coach, before going in to coaching someone, reflect on your behaviors, your interactions with that individual in other capacities or in other instances. So, for instance, let's say that you have a custodian that you wanted to talk to about some of the different parts of the building not really being kept up to par. Think back on how you may have talked with this individual, how, if this is a first time instance or if this is something new, and just think about your interactions with that individual. How do you greet the person in the morning? How do you handle a situation that requires that individual to be written up? If possible, have you written that individual up? So before you go into coaching, you want to reflect on everything about your interactions with that individual prior to going in. Why is that? Because it does have an impact. It will have an impact on how that session goes. There are other things that can also impact that session because, of course, you're dealing with an individual, you're dealing with a human. You're a human being as well. So there may be feelings that come up in those sessions that could be feelings of distrust, hate, anger. A lot of things can come up during the session that may have nothing to do with you or may have everything to do with you. So reflection beforehand is such an important thing to do. Reflect on your interactions with that individual before going in. And you want to be able to, talk about and talk out loud to yourself and talk about what is it that I want to see? What is it that I want to hear from this individual when I do go in? So think about that beforehand. What do you want to see? What do you want to hear? What are your expectations prior to going into a coaching session? And then let's say that you've had this coaching session and it didn't go so well. And in your mind now you're saying, oh, you are so uncoachable. Now what? Well, you have to work with this individual. This individual is in the building. If this is not an issue that requires going into immediate administrative role of dismissal or having a letter written, letter of reprimand, if there is still a coachable moment, even after you have gone in and coached, then there are some other questions that you need to ask yourself, because anytime you have more data, you have time to reflect back on data, and data could be anything. Again, it could be those interactions that you've had, comments that you've shared with each other. And that's just that. The example that I gave you was of a custodian. Let's look at the classroom teacher. If you're already gone in and coached a classroom teacher, you want to look at lesson plans, previous lesson plans. Maybe you'll be able to see that the teacher started out the year really strong, and then midway school year, you see where the lesson plans have just gotten a little lax, or you're not seeing what you once saw early on. There could be a lot of reasons as to why that's happening. But when you go into that meeting with that type of data, that data helps you to make your point about why you have that individual with you and you are trying to coach the individual. Some other questions or other things that you want to look at and ask yourself. I have a reflection sheet that I use before I go into coach an individual. And so on that sheet, I jot down who the individual is that I'm going to be working with. And then I jot down any behaviors or attitudes that I saw, whether I'm looking at a lesson or whether I'm looking at something that I saw in the building, saw what that person did or said or wrote. What are some of the things that I observed? So that could come from the notes that I've taken, from the lesson planning, from the lesson plans that individual has created, and I can look over those lesson plans, take note of what I'm seeing, or an assessment, taking notes of the assessment, walkthroughs, which are those short, quick snapshots of the lesson. It can be conversations. What is it that you observed? And observe could be what you see, but it also can entail what you're hearing. So I jot those things down. Then next, I start looking at some of those uncoachable actions. What are some of the things that the person said or did in that coaching session that I need to address? So you've got to look at what the issues are. And so in reflecting, you write those down so that you don't go in there with just a blank slate or a blank sheet or with no idea of what you're going to talk about. When you go into a coaching session or re-coaching session, please be specific. Be specific about what it is you want to address. Then the next thing that I'm looking at, that I'm reflecting on before I go back in to coach the individual is, how did this behavior impact our team? How did it impact our environment? How is this going to impact our school, our district? And so this is where you go back to your school goals, maybe even your district goals. Go back and pull those in. How does this person by not following and being uncoachable in this one action, how has this person impacted our environment? And you have to answer those questions again before going in, because it's not a coaching session if you go in and you just say all the things that this person did wrong and you have nothing to compare, no high points, no midway points. You have nothing to go back to. You always want to have a point in which you want to say, this is where you were, or this is where we as a school, we as a district want to be. And your actions affected these goals. So answer the question of how does the behavior impact the team or the environment? You have to ask yourself that question. And then lastly, I start putting together some strategies and what I could have done to address that behavior during the session. Maybe I didn't address it well, or maybe I did address it and it still didn't go over well with who I'm speaking with. I'm making note specifically of the strategies that I use. If I go back and I reflect and I had not offered up one strategy, then that's a problem. That means you did not have a coaching session. You had a session where you gave your feelings and your opinions, but you want individuals to walk away with some concrete ways of how to improve. Always be able to give individuals concrete ways to improve. So be specific. What strategies did you use? And this reflection, I say, should actually take place as soon after you've come out of that situation in which that person was not receptive of the coaching that you were giving at that point in time. You want to automatically go into this reflection. That way, when it's time for you to, again, meet with the individual to go over those topics or go over those behaviors that were not up to par, you will have your information already there, and it will still be good information because you reflected right after the event. So those are just a few ideas that I wanted to share with you today on this 7th year anniversary. April 3rd was actually the 7-year mark, but before April rolled out, I want to make sure that I gave you all some bit of information, and I felt that it was the best time because this is right before I go and facilitate a session at the Coaching for Change conference. And so I want to thank you again to my listeners who have been with me for these 7 years, or if you're just hearing me, thank you for being a part of my world, and thank you for downloading. Share it with your friends, share it with all your educator friends, and if this has been beneficial to you, then please share this with others, because I wanted to get this message out to everyone that as educators, we want to continue on this road to an effective classroom environment. That's all for now. I am your host, Dr. Lashawnte, and I will see and hear you next time. Bye-bye.